I am going to be talking about emotional eating. This is a very broad topic, and it is something I hear not just from my clients, but in conversations that I have all the time. People who say they do really, really good. Either they do good for a couple of weeks, they're on a plan, they're losing weight, and then something happens, it throws them off, some form of stressor, and they just downfall into a downward spiral of eating all of the things. Or they do good all day long, but then when dinner time comes around, it's almost like decision fatigue, which is actually a real thing, and they just get tired of making decisions, they're stressed out, and all they want to do is eat their feelings. These are all tied into emotional eating. One of the other really common ones, which if you're a woman watching this, you have at some point in your life probably done this, is breakups. Like when you go through a bad breakup, you're really, really sad, and all you want to do is sit on the couch with a whole entire pint of Ben & Jerry's and a bottle of wine. If you're like me, no shame in your game. You didn't even pour the glass, you drink it straight from the bottle, and you just want to numb out. Guys, I'm not saying that it's a terrible thing to do, because sometimes that's just life, but that is emotional eating. That is eating not from a need of hunger or sustainment, of keeping ourselves alive, but of using food and alcohol as a way to self-soothe our uncomfortable or painful emotions. And listen, I am the first to say that I have been there, done that. It was something I struggled with in the extreme for over a decade. I had an eating disorder. I was anorexic, and then it turned into a binge eating disorder where I was bulimic and I was abusing laxatives for a very, very long time. And the tips I'm going to talk about tonight, they're not even tips, they're actual strategies, are the four main strategies that pulled me out of that eating disorder and helped me stay away from emotional eating for good. And listen, I totally understand breaking the cycle of emotional eating can be very, very challenging, which is why I'm talking about it. With the right strategies, it is possible to develop healthier habits, no matter how long you have struggled with this, okay? And after years of being stuck in that yo-yo dieting cycle of doing really good on a plan, but then eventually, those emotional, whether it's just a stressful day at work or getting in a fight with your spouse or a breakup, whatever have you, left me coming crashing down. There's a way to break the cycle, and these are my four strategies to help you with that. Number one, and these aren't in order of importance because they're all very, very important, but I will say that first one, if you don't get the first one, you can't get the other ones. So the first one is identifying the triggers and the emotions. If you don't understand the emotions that you're feeling, it's hard to identify that you're being triggered, and it's hard to identify what your trigger is. So you really need to pay attention to these emotions. Identify the triggers that are leading to emotional eating. Common triggers can be stress is a big one. We all have stress, right? Boredom, when you're just bored sitting on the couch, you don't know what else to do, so you just want to stuff your face while you're watching Netflix. Sadness, which we talked about, like a breakup. Loneliness, or even happiness. Think about birthday parties. What do we want to do in a birthday party? Or what do you want to do when you want to celebrate a promotion or new job or graduating? You want to go out to eat. It's not necessarily a bad emotion that needs to be soothed with food. It can be happy emotions as well. By becoming aware of these triggers, you can start finding alternative ways to cope with your emotions instead of turning to food. Before I go into some of those, I want you to tell me, if you're watching this right now, what are some ways that you can think of that you can cope with your emotions, deal with those emotions that aren't food related? What are some of the alternative methods? Finding, and that's number two, developing these alternative coping mechanisms. Finding healthy and effective ways to cope with your emotions that don't involve eating. This would be anything from engaging in some sort of physical activity, going for a walk, riding your bike, just going to the gym, doing yoga, meditation, writing in your journal. Writing in your journal is so very important. Reflection is so necessary for growth. Reflection and journaling helps you to slow your thoughts down and get it out on paper. And when you get it out on paper, it organizes it to where you can work through some of these emotions instead of turning to a bag of chips or ice cream or whatever your food is. We all have that food. Some people are sweet, some people are team salty. Doesn't matter which one you are, but all of these will be helpful. You can seek support from friends, family members. If you have some sort of support group, and experiment with which activities help you. And I just kind of got ahead of myself tonight number 3, which is totally fine. You got to find something that works for you. For me personally, when I was first breaking the cycle, I had to physically remove myself from my house, especially when we're talking about not just emotional eating, but heading towards a binge. And if any of you have struggled with binge eating before, you know how magnetic that pull is when you first get that thought of, oh, it's gonna happen, because binging is so satisfying in the beginning because it rushes your brain with dopamine, especially when you're eating all those sugary foods, but of course leaves you feeling miserable after the fact. I would physically remove myself from the house and I would go for a walk. And just a 5-minute walk, you would be amazed at how it just changes things. It gets you away from the house. It kind of separates you from the thoughts and then the environment you were in. And that ties into one of the other things too, is to keep the trigger foods out of the house, because the closer you are to it, the more bound you are to eat it. If it's not in the house, you're gonna have to exert a lot more effort to go buy that food and eat that food. So keeping it out of the house and then changing your environment, which is my 3rd strategy. Create a supportive environment. And I already talked to you reaching out to supportive friends, family. You have some sort of support group. We have the Facebook group. If you're struggling, you're having a bad day, the Facebook group is a great place to post. All of these people really truly understand what you're going through, and we are not here to judge you. And then again, removing things from your environment that are tempting. If there are trigger foods, and this is not forever, this is temporary until you learn to have better control over your emotions. You get into really solid habits and you've repeated those habits over time of not turning to food for emotions. Mine was Oreos. For a very, very long time, I could not keep them in the house. Yes, I can keep them in the house now and not be tempted by them. When you're in the house with your trigger food, it's almost like it's hidden and you can hide it from yourself in the pantry, but it just like calls your name. And there's just like this gravitational pull towards the trigger food if you keep them in the house. So when you're first learning these new strategies and habits, you really got to keep it out of the house until you can learn some better self-control and learn better coping mechanisms. Now, outside of friends and support groups like the Facebook group, definitely consider working with a therapist or a coach, who specializes in emotional eating, to explore any sort of underlying issues that perhaps you either haven't addressed or have been putting off. You know it's there, but you're just too scared to work through it. And developing those strategies to overcome them with having a very close accountability partner to help you work through it, because it is scary. And I did not do it by myself. I worked with a coach for a couple of years. It took me quite a long time to practice these strategies over and over again. And there is no shame in how long it takes. Everyone's journey looks different. Some people are better in 6 months. Some are better in a year. Some people take 10 years. Everyone has their own path to travel. So that is tying into number 3, which is creating a supportive environment. That is physical environment, keeping trigger foods out of the house, but also that emotional environment. Who are you surrounding yourself with? One of the other ones too is not just having supportive friends, but having friends who understand you, having friends who support you and love you even when you want to change, friends who give you the space to change. So say you have a lot of friendships where you guys do go out to eat and go drinking every weekend, like that's just your thing, that's what you do, and you decide, you know what, I'm gonna start taking care of myself. I'm sick of drowning myself in food and alcohol. I'm gonna address what I've been through. I'm going to stop using food as my drug and I'm gonna get healthier. Well, when you make that decision, you can no longer continue to do those same activities with those people. And so what happens a lot of times is those people get offended, not because of you, but their own insecurities of you're doing something better for yourself. You're losing weight. You're starting to look really, really good. You're starting to love yourself, and they don't like it because it's a direct mirror back in their faces of what they are not doing and how they are not taking care of themselves. So anyone in the chat watching this, if you have ever gone on a weight loss journey, started taking care of yourself, and people start saying smart remarks like, oh, you're getting too skinny. You need to stop dieting. You look sick. Has anyone ever said that to you? Because I know I heard it all the time. Or at work when they would have luncheons or meetings, whatever, like, just this one time. No, not just this one time. I'm taking care of myself. I choose not to stress eat. I'm gonna eat the food that I bought. Thank you very much. And it's hard because it's like you're constantly having to badger all these people away from you, but that's what it takes. you gotta stand up for yourself. And I bet you didn't think that that was gonna be part of quitting emotional eating, but it is, because you're creating boundaries, and boundaries are part of creating that environment. Environment has strict boundaries, both physically and with relationships, emotionally. People just lack understanding, and it's not for us to get upset with them. It's not even our responsibility to force other people to understand where we're coming from, but that's where we have a choice as an adult to say, you don't have to understand, but this is my boundary and this is what I'm choosing to do right now, and I want to get better for myself, so I'm going to choose not to eat that or not go out to dinner or whatever it is. And of course, there are plenty of other things that you can do outside of just going out eating and drinking, and more likely than not, you'll get to know those friends a lot better because you'll be doing new activities and getting to know them, and you'll be sober, right? Now, moving on to my fourth and final strategy, mindful eating. Let's get down to the actual eating part. Paying attention to every aspect of a meal, being in the very present moment from second to second, being fully aware of the food choices that you have made, paying attention, sitting down with your food, not standing up, eating on the go, but really sitting with your food and having that moment, listening to the crunch of your food, paying attention to the smells, paying attention to the texture on your tongue, all the different tastes in your mouth. Those are the things that all tie into mindful eating. And with this, you can be better tuned into your hunger and satiety sensations. Whether you're really, really hungry or whether you're 80% full and 90% full, 100% full, I always say, especially if you're losing weight and you don't necessarily want to count calories, macros, or anything like that, pay attention to your body, eat slowly, and stop at 80% full. That strategy allows you to still eat whatever you technically want to eat, but you're going to end up eating smaller portions because you're not overstuffing your stomach. Now, that being said, it takes about 20 minutes for the hormones to hit your brain and say, hey, I'm full. So you gotta eat slow. And when you're eating mindfully, you will slow down considerably. Some other ways to do that is putting your fork down between bites, chewing that food thoroughly 10, 12, 15 times before you swallow it. And bonus to this, that helps with digestion. It helps to slow things down, and it gets more enjoyment out of your meal. And that's the thing, when you actually sit with your meal in the present moment, you actually enjoy the meal more. So then you're less tempted later on to snack and eat another meal an hour later because your brain enjoyed that meal so much. It's gonna stick with you, it really is. And it's gonna make you feel a lot better physically and emotionally when you're actually sitting down for that meal and not just eating something on the go, right? For those of you who work through lunches, cannot stress this enough, stop eating in front of your computer. Like, do not eat in front of your computer. Go to the lunchroom, go sit outside, go somewhere separate. Do not eat where you work. Just like you're not supposed to work where you sleep, don't eat where you work. Go somewhere separate. Get off your cell phone when you're eating. Pay attention to the food you're eating. You will enjoy it so much more. That's what mindful eating is all about. And when you are in a situation, because we're getting kind of away from the emotional aspect of it right now, when you're in a situation where you're feeling the urge to eat because you are stressed, because you are sad, and think about it, you had a really, really bad day at work and you have food to cook at home, but you're just so mentally exhausted from the stressful work day, you're like, screw it, I'm just gonna stop and get fast food on the way home. Stop, pause, think about what you really wanna do. Is it going to serve you, your goals, your health, your purpose, your life? Is it gonna make you feel better? Pay attention to the food that you're putting in your body and why. If you're saying, okay, I know I have food at home, but I really just don't have the mental energy. Okay, well, can you eat something that's a little bit quicker so you're not actually cooking a whole meal, but also not stopping and getting fast food that's gonna make you feel terrible later, so terrible. So those are some things that you can really use as cues to help you take a step back in the moment when you're, whatever emotion it is that you're feeling, and break that cycle. You have to break the cycle. These things don't just magically happen. So when you do something different for the first time, it's going to be painful and it's going to be uncomfortable, especially if one of the first things that you have to do is have a conversation with someone who's been very unsupportive of you eating healthier, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be really uncomfortable, but you just gotta do it. And you gotta remember, what are you more concerned about? Your health? Are you important? Are you putting everyone else's needs above yours and trying to please them and not wanting to step on any toes? It's a tough question to ask yourself. So remember, breaking the cycle of emotional eating does take time. It takes patience. Like I said, it's gonna be uncomfortable, so you're gonna have to practice this for a while. Be kind to yourself. Give yourself some grace through the process. Celebrate very small victories. So if you had a really stressful day and you said no to stopping and getting fast food or no to pulling that pint of ice cream out of the freezer, put it in the Facebook group. Tell us your wins. That's what we're there for. You have a whole community of people supporting you. And listen, if you're really struggling, reach out to me. Have that one-on-one coaching support, someone that you can reach out to every day on an individual basis and not just posting in a group with hundreds of members. But sometimes it does take that added accountability. Get that personalized guidance and support where we can actually come up with a plan, not just throwing these 4 strategies at you, but saying, okay, these are the situations that you're actually going through. How can we navigate them and how can we help you through it? You don't have to do this alone. You never did. You never have to in the future moving forward. So know that you have us as a resource here, the group and myself. I have a team of coaches who have open spots, are ready to help. You just have to reach out and let us know. We can't read your minds. If you're watching this right now, I don't know who you are, but you have to take that first step. And the first step is the scariest step. So that's all I got for you guys. If you're still watching, thanks for joining. Stay tuned. There's gonna be a lot more on this topic coming forward. I have a lot of personal experience with it, and I know so many people are struggling with it, so I really want to empower you guys to be able to handle this and situations that arise in your life. So hope you all have a wonderful evening. Have a good night, guys.